Discussion around FNAF is so bogged down with lore and solve that many people overlook just how grim the events of the series are. But what if I told you that these two factors are intrinsically linked? That the disgusting, grisly violence of FNAF's story is actually the key to understanding the many ghosts and paranormal happenings within. The horror of FNAF and its lore are two reasons the franchise is so beloved today. But when you combine the two to create one intentional narrative, it's like Ratatouille with the strawberry and the cheese. You get something shocking. So let's talk about guts. In recent years, FNAF VHS is a genre of video that has exploded. These are fan-made horror videos that fully demonstrate, and sometimes exaggerate, the brutality of William Afton's actions. And rewatching the videos on stream recently motivated me to do some investigating. How much of this is actually in FNAF? Our first important step in understanding FNAF better is to take a trip into Scott Cawthon's child murder mind brain and go back in time to FNAF 1. Let's cover all the instances of horrible shit William has done. Trigger warning. In Five Nights at Freddy's 1, we learn that William Afton lured 5 children into the back room and stabbed them to death. And there's a very real argument to be made that one of those children was placed alive inside a spring-lock suit that William rigged to fail. With just the slightest push, the suit's metal parts would spring back into place with a child trapped inside. Countless sharp pieces of metal would pierce their vital organs, and the child would slowly bleed out, gasping while drowning in their own blood on the floor. And that's just the beginning. In Five Nights at Freddy's 2, William finds a child alone outside and stabs them, dragging the body into a back alley to bleed out alone. He also presumably murders 5 more children, again leaving them to die slowly on the floor in pools of their own blood. By Five Nights at Freddy's 4, this freak has gotten bored with only inflicting physical violence. It's time for him to inflict maximum psychological torment as well. William creates a series of illusion experiments designed to trap children in a looping nightmare where they are being hunted and killed repeatedly. And if the tale story Didophobia is at all accurate, these experiments can run for up to 10 years without malfunctioning. That's 10 years of torture and fearing for your life. And how does William Afton get children to put in here? It's almost certainly kidnapping. Which brings us to the most important game in the franchise: sister location. William Afton designs an entire underground bunker with one purpose: to endlessly capture children, experiment on them for immortality, and kill them. He builds a massive device in the bunker, something capable of producing remnant, which is essentially child soul juice. A substance powerful enough to infinitely power and animate anything. Afton needs something very particular to create this substance, and to get it, he makes the Funtimes, animatronics designed with the capability of kidnapping and murder. So let's break down which each of these animatronics was actually built to do. Funtime Foxy is motion activated. It responds instantly to movement. Anything trying to run would be immediately caught by Funtime Foxy. It can mimic the voices of a child's parents to gain their trust, and has a variable scent release feature, meaning if William, for some reason, knew a kid enjoyed chocolate cake, Foxy could emit a chocolate cake scent and that child would go investigate. It even has a remote floor anchor, likely to lock itself down if it gets caught mid-kidnapping. Ballora is audio activated, and her job doesn't revolve around the children, but the parents. She deters and misdirects. Her job is essentially to soak up attention and confuse people so that eyes are kept off the kidnapping. But the next two animatronics are the most important. Funtime Freddy can assess proximity, presumably that's the distance between children or between children and himself, and he's also listed as having a grouping coordinator. Stop. That ability, tracking children and grouping coordination, is only ever explicitly linked to Circus Baby in the gameplay, and yet that's not listed on her blueprint, which tells us something interesting. The Funtimes can do more than what their blueprints let on. Funtime Freddy can also track parents, has a 360-degree pivot to avoid them, and he can mimic voices, lure children, and physically store a child inside his body. He's kind of like the jack of all trades of the Funtimes. He can deal with parents like Ballora, lure kids like Foxy, and kidnap them like Baby, but isn't specifically designed around any of those abilities like the others are. And then there's Circus Baby. On paper, she actually looks harmless. All that's written here is stuff about balloons, ice cream, music, and an emergency stop feature. This is all pretty tame, which is very strange because in Sister Location, the board member is shook by the design choices of Circus Baby, even though looking at these blueprints, this is all pretty standard stuff. There's no mention of the giant murder claw or of the subconscious children counter, which again confirms what I stated earlier. What William Afton has written down on these blueprints isn't the full scope of what each of these animatronics is capable of. So we have multiple incidents of stabbing children and leaving them to bleed out, impaling all of someone's organs in a springlock suit, cumulative decades of mental torture, and animatronics that can scoop and disembowel you. But I still have to link all this violence back to that machine in the basement, the machine that produces Remnant. This. The scooper is one of the cruxes of the lore. It represents the immortality that Afton is striving for and the lengths he's willing to go to achieve it. We're already pretty close to understanding what goes into creating possessions in FNAF. There's some overlap between the events we've discussed so far. But to get our final answer, we need to go to one more place. One more terrifying, bone-chilling place. The books. You see, William Afton, especially in the fourth closet, isn't just a murderer, he's a freaking scientist! And near the end of that book, after one of his dramatic villain monologues, he casually drops the most important line to understanding anything paranormal in Five Nights at Freddy's. The spirit follows the flesh. And he says this while Circus Baby is actively ripping out his kidney and slamming it into Molten Freddy. Yeah, that happens. You'd think more people would bring that up, because we can also infer that William is doing this to control the animatronic. By putting his organ into it, he's somehow able to increase the control he has over the body. In other words, his soul is directly tied to his guts. This detail is entirely overlooked. I have seen no big theorists talk about William Afton performing organ transplants on animatronics, even though the book literally calls it a transplant in those exact words. But with this in mind, a lot of William's actions suddenly make sense, because now we know there are two different types of possession in the FNAF universe. The first is what I'll call memory-based possession. This is what Charlie is in both the novels and the games. It's the type of possession that comes about because of intense emotions or an intense emotional attachment to the object you die near. We know that Charlie's spirit is different from the others. She's aware, and she tells us as much in Ultimate Custom Night.
The others are like animals, but I am very aware.
We also see this same type of possession in Fazbear Frights, with the doll Jake has in his cupboard that he later goes on to possess. Now here's the problem. William Afton is a stupid freaking chud. He cannot, for the life of him, recreate what happened with Charlie. He keeps trying, but it's like a shitty bootleg. He instead stumbled onto something else. The second form of possession. The one where the spirit follows the flesh. Think about it. How do the original 5 animatronics become possessed? William kills the kids and stuffs their bodies, and by extension, their internal organs, inside the suits. How does Circus Baby become possessed by Elizabeth? A giant claw grabs her, kills her, and pulls her entire body inside the suit. How does Springtrap become possessed by William Afton? His heart is inside the suit. William doesn't put kids in suits to hide the bodies. He doesn't design Baby and Funtime Freddy with child storage tanks to help him run a covert operation. He's doing it because it's integral to the possession process, the thing he's been experimenting for. Listen to what Baby says the night after she's been rented out with Ballora.
There is something bad inside of me.
Yeah, there is something bad inside of you. It's probably somebody's liver. Wait, there's something bad inside me too. Oh no. Here it comes. Oh, ouch. Yeah, you should probably press that because I am far from done with these connections. Let's keep going. Still in sister location, right around the time Baby says that line we just talked about, Ennard is looming behind her, emitting this ominous sound effect. Oh yeah, that sounds pretty gross, huh? I wonder what it's called. Maybe something basic like a twigs underscore breaking. No, fuck you. The sound is literally called guts. In fact, the name of the stock asset itself is called human body damage. I feel like Scott is hitting me over the head with a baseball bat. Now, a while back, I made something called schedule theory, which is probably mostly wrong. But one thing I still stand by is this. The Funtime animatronics have been capturing children for years as part of an automated, unsupervised process. That means years and years of bodies and organs making their way through this bunker. So what happens to all those organs? Because eventually someone's gonna notice the like 300 gallbladders inside these robots. Unless there's somewhere the animatronics go regularly. Somewhere that could remove the remains. If only there were a machine designed specifically to scoop things out of them. Jarvis, bring up the scooper blueprint. Before we dive into this, let's play Circus Baby's description of the scooper.
Isn't that a fun name for something? The scooper. It sounds like something you would use for ice cream, or custard, or sprinkles. It sounds like something you would want at your birthday party to ensure that you get a heaping portion of every good thing. I wonder, though, if you were a freshly opened pint of ice cream, how you would feel about something with that name. Thankfully, I don't think a freshly opened pint of ice cream feels anything at all.
There's one phrase in that speech that matters more than everything else she says. Freshly opened pint of ice cream. Now, for those of you without a degree in Scottology, here's something important. Scott Cawthon does not choose descriptive words randomly, especially in moments where lore is being revealed. Take Candy Cadet's story about sister location, for example. The thing that kills the kitten is described as a red snake trapped in a metal cage. The descriptive words, red and metal, aren't meaningless. They're to clue you into the fact that we're talking about Circus Baby. So when Baby uses the phrase freshly opened, that word choice is doing some heavy lifting for Scott. She could have simply said,
"How would a pint of ice cream feel about the scooper?"
But no, she talks about timing. It's a freshly opened pint of ice cream. The animatronics aren't the only thing being scooped here. It's the freshly murdered children inside them as well. And they're afraid of the scooper. Why? Well, we need to look at the blueprint to find out. The first thing to know is the acronym itself. The S stands for scalable. And right away, this should ring some alarm bells, because in the fourth closet, William Afton is described as moving his organs piece by piece, incrementally. Now, why does he do this? Well, he tells us he's trying to guide his soul into a new vessel over time, while observing how much control he has over his old and new bodies. This is the exact same principle the scooper operates on: scalable, incremental possession. Fourth closet William can control how much of him goes into something by inserting only a small amount of his flesh, and the scooper does the same thing, but on a way more efficient level. The scooper is a very complex machine, so we better break down how it works to understand this process. Let's first dive into the excavating arm. This is the part that physically scoops out the insides of an animatronic. And if, in theory, there were a child inside, said animatronic when this happens, the arm is large enough to remove both the child and chunks of metal along with it. Hell, it's this very arm that removes Michael Afton's guts at the end of the game. Next, the scooper's remnant injector. So, by looking at this, we know it doesn't just remove bodies and metal, but it also infuses life force into the animatronics it comes into contact with, which raises the obvious question. Where is this life force coming from? Look at this. The blueprint tells us there's a trace amount of remnant present on the scooper at all times. At all times. Now, the employees that tend the scooper hardly know or care what it is, addressing that it's a fully automated system and walking away, meaning the scooper isn't just utilizing existing remnant they have lying around somewhere, it's producing it. And that's where the final component comes in, the remnant reservoir. By definition, this is where remnant is stored. So, here's the full picture. The scooper arm removes the child's body and animatronic metal. Both materials are then dumped into the reservoir where they're melted down and churned together, and the final substance is loaded into the injector at an optimal temperature to be used on the next animatronic that's scooped. It's an infinite, self-sustaining loop. As long as everything in William's bunker is functioning, this process will run non-stop. So yes, even the creation of remnant requires guts. But all of this, sister location, the scooper, even FNAF 1, comes after William already understands how possession works. It all starts with his son back in 1983. Aside the crying child's deathbed, William tells him something very important. I will put you back together. And immediately after this is said, the boy flatlines. Now, in FNAF 4, it's very clear what actually leads to the bite victim's death. His brain is turned into mush by Fredbear, and this interpretation of his mind being literally broken is backed up by FNAF World and the logbook, where he is clearly confused, remembers nothing, and needs someone else to fix him. There's a popular theory that the map of FNAF World is meant to look like a brain, the crying child's brain. And with today's discussion in mind, that makes another detail in this franchise really interesting. Dreadbear. A character that most of the fandom agrees represents the bite victim, has a minigame where you must physically place a brain into an animatronic's head to give it proper cognitive function. Not only that, you have to first go out of your way to prepare the brain correctly for it to work, even using controlled shocks to help with your experiment. How subtle. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this minigame is telling us exactly what William meant when he said he would put his son back together. It was anything but a metaphor. He was talking about fixing the bite victim's literal brain. And if you think that's reaching, this also explains another detail theorists tend to gloss over. Nightmare and Nightmare Fredbear, other characters that represent the crying child, who very visibly have a brain inside their head. So, going by this theory, at some point, the Golden Freddy suit must contain or come into contact with the crying child's human brain. And more evidence can be found in the dreaded books. In The Man in Room 1280, it's explicitly stated that the vengeful spirit and William Afton are interacting inside Afton's brain. Their means of communication is a physical human brain where they both have some level of agency. This is a direct parallel to what I believe FNAF World represents. Remember the brain map? This is how Cassidy and the bite victim interact. They aren't telepathically communicating from the fucking ghost dimension. They're both occupying one brain, just like in Fazbear Frights. So, let's zoom out and take a broad look at what we got so far. The FNAF 1 animatronics have guts inside them. Springtrap has guts inside him, obviously. Golden Freddy has a brain inside him, some fucking how. And the sister location animatronics are powered by a melted down gut metal smoothie. William Afton has been slowly learning and optimizing this means of possession with no intention of stopping until he's satisfied with the result. He is absolutely disgusting. All right, time to pull a John FNAF and do a need more proof lightning round. First, sister location teasers. Ennard says, there is a piece of me in every body. Under Guts theory, that's literal. The scooper, due to how it works, has distributed a piece of Elizabeth's corpse into every animatronic, and that is why Michael says he successfully put her back together after Ennard is formed. Next, Ruin. We know Maskbot is very likely possessed by the Help Wanted 2 player, and what happens at the end of Help Wanted 2? The player is literally pulled apart piece by piece by staff bots. And when we see Maskbot in Ruin, there's something in his head, something that looks an awful lot like a brain. Now, let's talk about the Funtimes themselves, because if these machines were designed with human experimentation in mind, you'd expect more hints toward that, and we get them. The Funtime's endoskeleton structure closely resembles the human muscular system, perfect to pair with human body parts. But move over because it's time for Security Breach, where using a scooper, Vanny is very likely attempting to bring Burntrap back to power. And if this is the same suit Afton died in, then the remnant is probably being used to regenerate his organs and restore his bodily agency. If it can do that. Tom from Game Theory has pointed out the suspicious gas canisters scattered throughout Sister Location and Security Breach. Both of these locations have a scooper. Perhaps this is liquid nitrogen or another cooling substance to preserve the quality of the organs. Which brings us back to Circus Baby, who scoops children into the same stomach cavity that frozen ice cream comes from. An area we know must be cold because it produces fucking ice cream. Something similar is found with Funtime Freddy. In Count the Ways, he's capable of freezing people to death. And don't forget Toy Chica the high school years, where Toy Chica kidnaps a new person every day and takes a piece of their body as a memento, mixing the different body parts together in her bag. All right. So that's all. Just kidding. Fuck you. There's more. In Special Delivery, Mangle says, I am now so many pieces of people, all making me the fox I am today. Under Guts theory, this is no longer seen as metaphorical. In Room for One More, there's a trash bin outside the Sister Location bunker that smells like rotting flesh. Candy Cadet has stories that involve combining and stitching bodies together. In the FNAF movie 2, William for some reason has surgical tools in his animatronic workshop, where he just so happens to also be keeping Circus Baby. And a very recent new discovery by Michael02000 points out that the stuff that flies out of Bellora's model when she gets scooped is called Make Guts. The evidence for this is nearly endless. William Afton, in an attempt to create immortality, discovers that by using real human organs, you can cause and control a possession. And he takes this to the most extreme degree he can. Every single possession that is deliberately caused by William Afton uses children's organs as the driving power source. Now, what about the problems with this theory? Well, it makes me uncomfy. Yeah, that's an actual problem for this theory on the wiki. But in all seriousness, the MCI victims' bodies would have had to have been removed from the animatronics at some point, as the withered animatronics don't have any bodies in them, yet still act possessed in FNAF 2. I also struggle to see where a body could be hidden in FNAF 1 Foxy with this giant-ass gash in his chest. Another problem is that the gas canisters appear to be oxygen in Sister Location Custom Night, where the mini-arenas attack them, not a substance to help freeze things. And lastly, The Funtimes get scooped every week, so it's a pretty shitty means of possession if Afton needs to keep refilling them with remnant. And that's about it. Feel free to comment if you've noticed more errors in the theory. Overall, I think this is a very solid theory with only a few logical leaps, and gives us a reason as to why the brutality of William's actions was necessary for his goals. If you like this video, you should freaking like and subscribe right now so you get more videos from me that you enjoy. Cool, thanks, bye.